I also have seen on LinkedIn that you guide people in terms of career in finance. So I have few specific questions connecting to that. Like for example, when we talk about the resume. So if you can give us 4 or 5 tips with respect to how your resume should look like for a core finance role. Do you get questions like this that, sir, I am fresher right now. I do not have any experience. How will I get job?
Yeah, a lot. So especially in FP&A.
If you can tell us what does FP&A do, and also how it connects to all the teams in the organization. Now, if somebody wants to succeed in this FP&A role, 2 or 3 skill set that, as per your understanding, should be good enough. And any unique mistake that people generally do when they're creating series. If you remember from the way you have been interacting with a lot of students, do you see a lot of accounting people doing FP&A? That is fun. Second, is it easy for them to enter into FP&A? Hello guys, hi, this is Ganesh Nayak. I help finance professionals and students to excel in their career and become a better version of themselves. And I also help students who are preparing for competitive exams for finance and like CFA, FRM, and CRB. And as a part of the series to help students to get into right roles and right career path, we have started out with podcasts. And in these podcasts, we call out a lot of industry people, veterans, who talk about what is actually happening in finance teams and finance roles. And today we have with us Asif, and he's going to be helping us understand that aspect more detail. He's actually a finance guy who has worked into the finance role, especially into FP&A, and he has seen all the core areas of finance closely. So he can give us the perspective of different teams, then what he has seen people doing career in finance. So Asif, first of all, thank you very much for taking out time. And for the audience, if you can give a brief about your journey till now.
Thank you so much, Ganesh, for inviting me. It's a pleasure to have this conversation with you. Surely I can talk a little bit about my background. So I completed my CA, which is my base qualification, back in 2011. So it's been 13 years now. While I was doing my CA, I was doing internship with EY in audit profile. So I did my 3 years of internship, which is required by the CA Institute with EY. And I continued there for a while. I continued there for 1 more year. And after doing audit for 3 to 4 years, it felt like probably I should try something else. And audit was probably, I was enjoying doing audits, but I thought this is a good time to explore some other functions and other areas of finance as well, because when you're young, when you're new, you can experiment a different role, and maybe if it doesn't work out, you can always come back in the first few roles. So that was the idea. And I was very interested in 3 roles. One was investment banking, the second one was equity research, and the third one was working in the industry, so working in finance as FP&A analyst or somebody in the industry. So those were 3 broad areas I wanted to explore. And my first choice was investment banking. That did not work out. Luckily, I got a role in FP&A in Citibank. So in 2000, somewhere in 2013, I started working with Citibank. I worked there as analyst. I started there as a FP&A analyst. Once I moved from analyst to senior analyst, and by the time I left Citi in 2019, which is about 5 years of working there, I worked there in different roles in different business units. And when I left, I was an FP&A manager there. So that was my first real job. First job after internship, after in working as an FP&A analyst and FP&A manager. After doing that for 5 years, I realized probably one of the reasons I had done CA was also to explore practice. I always wanted to see how it feels like working in a CA firm or working as a CA, as a practicing CA, doing taxation, doing audit. So that was something I thought would be a good experience. And at that time, which was somewhere in 2017, 18, 19, while I was deciding this, GST, which is and which now is the indirect taxation law for India, that was getting implemented. So that was something that
Okay.
I got interested in, and I started reading a lot about goods and service tax at that time, which was new. And
Okay.
uh, while working with Citi, I got so much interested in it, and uh, finally I decided that maybe I should do something about this, and I quit my job. I quit my role at Citi in 2019, and I
Okay.
started my own CA firm, which was my own CA firm, Masani and Associates, which was 2019, and
Okay.
uh, fortunately, with the grace of God, it did well. It did in the first year itself. I did about, I don't know, 300 plus income tax returns. About We had about 25-30 GST clients, so it did well in the
Okay.
first year. However, when COVID started, which was early
Yeah.
2020, at that time it was a difficult situation for me because I had hired about a team of 4 to 5 people under me, and
Hmm.
our key area or industry expertise was into hotel and restaurants. So those were our key clients, all 20 or
Okay.
25 of them. And suddenly the revenue started, I mean, stopped coming in, and that's the time I had to decide, should I how should I go forward. And one option was to let go all of the people that I had hired, and that was the last option I had in mind. But
Hmm.
luckily, I got a consulting role in FP&A, so I decided let me go back to FP&A for some time, and let me see how that goes. So at that time, there were a lot of hiring issues and freezes going on, so I could not find a full-time role in FP&A. However, I got a consulting assignment with
Okay.
consulting firm, which was basically working with Pfizer, which is a pharma company, big pharma company. Again, they were not hiring for full-time roles because of the hiring freeze, but they were okay to hire a consultant who was in for a 6 month or 8 month assignment. So I took that assignment, and basically that all the money I used to make from the consulting was supporting my CA firm, paying the bills.
Okay.
And my father decided, because of COVID, he could also not travel, and he decided to then take over that firm. So that firm is now today being led. I mean, that the CA firm is being managed by my dad right now.
Okay.
And I came back into FP&A, which was unfortunate or fortunate, I don't know. But I got so interested after that
That's
consulting role in Pfizer. After completing that consulting assignment, I got interested in. I moved into the Edtech industry, which was doing well during the. One thing I realized, probably I should get into an industry which does well in work from home situations, and the COVID should not impact any of those
okay.
things. So that's why I got interested in the edtech industry. I worked with a company called Great Learning, which was later on taken
Uh-huh.
over by Byju's. So I worked there for a while. Then I moved to Coursera. At Coursera, I led the FP&A team for India and APAC. Did that for 2.5 years. Simultaneously, I got a lot in. I mean, I got so much interested in FP&A that I started writing about it on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And after writing, say about, I wrote, I don't know, 50, 70 articles on LinkedIn. Then I had enough material to publish my first book on FP&A, which was this all about FP&A. This was back in 2022. And
Right.
most recently, I quit my job at Coursera, which is 6 months ago. And now I am doing full time training and coaching in FP&A. And this is the latest book that came out last week, which is From Accounting to FP&A, which is my second book,
Wow.
which I wrote in 2024. So that has been my journey all over. So I've seen audit, I've seen FP&A, I've seen even CA roles, which is taxation and audit. So that's
Okay.
been my journey in the last few years.
Wonderful. Wonderful. So after this, all of this entire exciting journey, now if somebody asks you and tell that okay, what all different teams are there under a CFO in a normal organization? So what would that be?
So let's take an example, or let's take a situation where it's a mid-sized to large organization. Under
Mhm.
CFO, typically you will have three different types of teams. Again, there could be
Okay.
more teams, but these are the three broad buckets or three broad categories. The first
Okay.
one is into compliance and responsible for accounting and compliance, basically. So these teams would include accountants, controllers, people who would be making sure that all the transactions are recorded properly, all the transactions
Okay.
are presented properly in different forums, be it your monthly reporting, be it your quarterly reporting. So
Okay.
accounting controller team is one big part of the CFO team. Then
Okay.
in the on the compliance side, you also have the taxation, which includes both your indirect and direct taxation team. Depending on the size of the organization, it could be just one or two people, or it could be a bigger team. So that is basically what the compliance teams would do: accounting,
Okay.
controlling, along with a small team for taxation, which could be indirect, including the indirect and the direct taxation. The uh, second part would be more into commercial
Mhm.
roles, which are what I used to do for a long time, which is into business
Okay.
finance. So yeah, FP&A is one of the terms. However, more commonly recognized in India, especially FP&A probably is a more international term. In India, it is more recognized as business finance roles, or people who
Okay.
directly talk to the business but are actually doing finance work. So it could be helping the business
Okay.
teams with different arrangements on the commercials, pricing, helping them with understanding what their budget is, helping them understand what resources they have, what would be the
Okay.
return on investment for the next project they are undertaking. Is the project doing work? I mean, is the project worth doing, financially
Okay.
viable? So all those aspects are covered by this team, which is the business finance teams, and also the FP&A team. FP&A team is
Mhm.
specifically responsible for preparing the budgets, uh,
Okay.
preparing the forecast, which is the how does the financials look for the next quarter, next 6 months, next 1 year,
Right.
and a lot of management reports. So management reports which are required for making decisions by the CEO and one level below CEO. So all the senior management typically requires a lot of data, a lot of reports, a lot of dashboards to be able to get to the decisions that they make on a weekly and a monthly basis. So
Okay.
that is where FP&A team comes in. Budgeting, forecasting, management reporting are key core skills for FP&A. So that's the second, the second bucket. And
Mhm.
the third one, the final one, is more of a specialty role, which
Okay.
might be, again, this can be any specific domain expertise other than the controller and the business finance role. So it could be, in some companies I've seen treasury roles. So they are responsible for
Yeah.
managing the money of the company, and risk management is another area which you teach. And so being able to identify, assess, and manage and mitigate those risks is one big area. Other than that, a lot of uh, today, especially in today's times, a lot of finance teams depend on tools and technology. A lot of softwares are being used. So
Right.
becoming a SME or a domain expert in one of those softwares could be another specialty area.
Okay.
So yeah, those are the three broad buckets: the controller or the accounting and the compliance tax roles, business finance and FP&A, and the third one would be specialty roles like a SME in one particular tool which the finance team uses, or somebody who manages risk,
Mhm.
somebody who's into managing money, which is treasury.
Right. Because in bigger organizations, generally treasury is a separate division altogether.
Yes,
And even
yes,
though CFO is a part of it, or basically looks after it, you generally have a treasury head who's going to be
yes,
the ultimate person who's going to take a call. And
absolutely.
also with respect to the risk management team that you mentioned, so it's basically kind of, if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, so a first line of defense within your finance team, that if something goes wrong, so this team or these group of people who are within finance will be able to take some steps. Basically, that's the idea.
Absolutely. Being able to proactively identify any risk and uh,
Right.
suggest remedies if something is going to happen, and be ready for any of the potential risk as well as opportunities. So it's not just risk, but also capitalizing on opportunities which are, say, a big customer or a big trend that they identify. So it's both on risk as well as opportunities.
Okay. Okay. And I also have seen on LinkedIn that you guide people in terms of career in finance. So I have few specific questions connecting to that. Like for example, when we talk about the resume, okay. So if you can give us 4 or 5 tips with respect to how your resume should look like for a core finance role.
Sure. So, in terms of resume, let me talk about some of the tips that I think could be helpful for especially people who are very new in finance role, or people who have just been in finance for maybe 2 to 3 years. So,
Hmm.
one thing I would recommend, and I don't see this people doing a lot, is having a different version of the CV for different roles that they apply for. So it should not
Right.
be the same CV. So ideally, you should have one base version of your CV, which you should use to create the other versions. But you cannot use the same CV to apply for audit roles and for FP&A role and for taxation role. So
Got it.
ideally, you should have different versions of the CV where you highlight specific skills that are going to help those particular roles. So I think that is one thing I would have recommended people to do. A lot of people apply for 20, 30 roles in a day. Rather than that, spend time on applying for maybe 2 or 3 roles, but do that very strategically,
Properly,
and
yeah.
make sure that you tailor your CV to the job description, read the job description very carefully. So that would be
Okay.
the first and probably the most important tip. Second tip would be is what I've seen is people, even if people have 5 to 7 years of experience, they write very long resumes, so maybe 2, 3, 4 pages.
Uh,
uh, Generally, the HR people who are scanning the resumes, or even the manager who's going to take your interview, they may not have the time to read 4 pages of resume. So
right.
what I suggest, especially to people who are in our student group, is make sure that it is crisp. If you can make it one pager, if not, maybe maximum it should be 1.5 page, 2 pages, and only talk about things that sells your experience. So don't talk about all the things that you've done. Talk about things that are relevant to the job description, and areas where you think you've contributed positively, or you've achieved certain things in your prior roles. Maybe highlight those instead of just listing all the things that you've done. So that could
Right.
be the second thing. And on the third one, what I could say is, uh, when you prepare the resume, make sure that the selling part, right, you focus on selling your experience rather than just listing it. So
Okay.
quantifying your experience is very important. So I'll just give an example. So I could say that I have a lot of experience in working in FP&A, and uh, I am looking for a role as a FP&A manager. That could be one statement. But the second statement could be, especially when people write the first line in the CV, which is a career objective. There
Yeah.
they could probably use this. So something like, I have 10 years of experience of working in banking sector in FP&A, and I have worked on budgets which I have handled budgets which were 500 million in magnitude. So that's very specific compared to what I just first mentioned. So
Right.
having a very specific job description, or especially the first few lines in the CV, which people usually write on the objectives or the key goals, which people mention. So I think those would be the three important things that I would tell people.
Okay. And any unique mistake that people generally do when they're creating series, if you remember from the way you have been
Yeah.
interacting with a lot of students.
Yeah. So one maybe again I can talk about two or three of them, and we can then discuss if you want to go into detail into any one of them. So one thing I have noticed is people mention their hobbies and interests, which they mention it for the sake of having it on the CV. But when you have a conversation in the interview, they are not able to talk. I'll just give you an example. There was an interview I took, and that person had mentioned that reading is an hobby of that particular candidate. But when you ask them which which is the latest book you have read, and they had no answer. So make sure that you only put your genuine interests and hobbies. If you are putting the interests and hobbies, you should definitely have them, because that's an icebreaker. Sometimes can help you in the interviews if you have a common interest. So you should definitely
Right.
have interests and hobbies, but make sure that those are genuine interests and hobbies and
Genuine.
not.
Yeah.
Yes, and that goes for everything on the CV. Make sure that you genuinely know what you have written in the CV, because the interview doesn't know you, the interviewer doesn't know you personally, right? So whenever
Hmm.
he has to ask a question to you or ask you about something, it will be coming from those CV points that you have shared. So that is probably one mistake. Another mistake I've seen is typing errors. So make sure that, I mean, probably it's very
Ah,
basic, but make sure that you get your CVs proofreaded. Now it's I mean, you can use AI tools and make sure that you don't have any spelling errors, especially roles like FP&A or business finance, where attention to detail, or any finance role for that matter, attention to detail is very
yeah.
important. And if you have spelling errors or mistakes in your CV, grammatical errors in the CV, that would probably show that, I mean, that would reflect poorly on your interviews, and might
Right.
be a negative point for you. So I think those are the two things that come to mind in terms of the mistakes.
Okay. Now the second point that you mentioned now, that is what some senior person also told me, that he was taking an interview for AVP and VP level, and people coming over there with mistakes in their CV.
Yeah.
So automatically it's a big no from the organization that you cannot work over there. Now, from the CV, let us talk about interview. Okay, I'll be talking about interview tips also, but when you are taking interview, what are the big red flags for you?
Yeah. So one thing I mean, uh, maybe not red flags, but things that I would probably expect the candidate to do as a research is
Okay.
learn about the company, research about the company. So very simple questions like, what are the top five products of the company that you are going for, or what are the top five products or services of our company.
Yeah.
Those are some basic things that I would expect the person to research. Yeah, so probably that would be, I would have that somewhere in my interview, asking them, okay, have you gone through the website of the company? Tell me
Hmm.
what are the top three products of our company. So that tells you the interest of the candidate in that role.
Right.
And you can do a lot more research, but this is something very basic that you should definitely do.
Right.
That is one. Other thing that I usually would try to see is the candidate having a high energy, or is the candidate enthusiastic. So typically, I mean, generally comes across when the person is speaking and interacting with you, and it usually, I mean, there's no particular question that I would ask to assess that, but based on the conversation that you
Based on the
have,
interaction, yes.
you can get a sense. And that's what people say, right? People generally decide when you have to hire a person or not in the first 1 or 2 minutes, or maybe 3 minutes of the interview, maximum maybe 2 minutes. So that's where the energy, the enthusiasm,
Correct.
it should come up while you are talking about the first question where they describe about themselves. So I think that energy, enthusiasm, initiative is probably the second thing that I would look for.
Because you talked about this initial 1 2 minute. So
Yes.
I can say that a lot of people take this, a lot of employers basically take decisions also on the basis of gut feeling, that
Yes.
whether this
Yes.
person will be able to cope up with the work or not.
Yeah.
So that because they have to dedicate time to train you,
Yeah.
because any which ways the work that they are doing is not rocket science. So if you go in the job, you'll be able to understand it. But whether I should give you the opportunity, whether I should spend time with you to train you, that is what I think so a lot of people are judging when they take interviews.
Absolutely, and to that point, I also think, I mean, most employers would
Huh.
be assessing you on the basis of their job is to take a look at the job description and make sure that you tick as many boxes as you can. So, talking about relevant things that are on the job description and not irrelevant things which maybe not, I mean, directly related to the job, also is one of the things that you should keep in mind. So although you might have done some good things in the previous company, but if it does not relate to the
Hmm.
requirements in the job description, maybe that may not be the good point to bring it up in the interview. Rather talk about some things that are required for the job description and tell or give examples about those, or things that are very related to the job description.
Okay, okay. And now, since you have been interacting with a lot of young people, a lot of people who wish to enter into finance, I want to connect this to a basic requirement which a lot of people look in their interviews, that what is the attitude of the test. So,
Yeah.
what has been your feedback when you're talking to so many people with respect to that attitude part?
Yes. So, see, again, it comes back to the same thing that I mentioned: energy, enthusiasm. You are. I mean, you should be able to only wait for you to be able to gauge the attitude in those 15, 20, 30 minutes is to see how people are taking initiative, what they have done in their past roles, which signifies that they have taken some initiative. They have been proactive in taking certain steps during their previous roles. So
Right,
those are a few things. And if you're hiring for a very fresher kind of a role, which is probably straight out of college, and I you know some people or many of the viewers might be in that bucket. So in that role, the interviewer is not looking for experience. So interviewer is not looking. So interviewer is looking for something which would be that you've read the job description, you've understood what the job description requires, and even if you've
hmm,
not done that in the past, you should be able to articulate that in the interview, making or comforting the interviewer that okay, I understand this are the three or four important requirements of the job, and I will do my best to be able to help on these five things or three things. So
okay,
that brings out the attitude, that is the attitude which I'm looking for. And I have hired a lot of freshers which hasn't had a lot of experience, but you can tell, and that's where giving them projects. So a lot of times you might see that the interviews are giving you some short projects or assignments to complete, and that's where
right,
also you can see how in depth they go, or how much effort they put in those projects. So that is
right,
another way to see their attitude, enthusiasm. You might, if you have shortlisted on the interviewer side, say two or three candidates, and if you're not able to decide who one should you pick, the best thing to do is to give them the same project and see how much effort and how much that also shows how skillful they are in
right.
what the work is required. So I think those are a few things that you can see. The first thing I mentioned was on their ability to demonstrate the initiative, what they have done in the past. Second would be on the understanding the job description and being able to articulate it, and the third one being how good are they in how much effort they put in the assignment or the interview task that you've given them.
And do you get questions like this that, sir, I am fresher right now. I do not have any experience. How will I get job?
Yeah, a lot. So especially in FP&A. So again, I'm talking about FP&A a lot because I worked in FP&A. A lot of people reach out to me saying that I don't have any FP&A experience, but I want to work in
Hmm.
FP&A. So that is a common situation, and I get such messages almost every week. So and what I tell those people is, first of all, you have to understand what FP&A is. I'm not generalizing this. So any profile you want to get into, be it accounting, be it taxation, be it audit, be it FP&A, you have to first
Mhm.
understand what the people in that profile do. So that is a
Okay.
basic thing, and you can do that through interaction with your mentors who have been in that profile. You can do it through online courses. You can do it through books. So different ways to do that. But first of all, understand what happens practically in those profiles. Although you might have learned something in your academic career, but practically what happens might be slightly different or maybe totally different from what you have studied. So first of all, understand what are the requirements for those roles, and you can do that through mentors, books, online courses. uh, and once you understand those requirements, then you approach once you do that, and then you approach for the interviews, your conversation will be totally different. You will not be asking these questions because you've done your research on the role, you've talked to maybe two people who have been in that role. So in that case, your conversation will change. Okay, although I don't understand or I don't have experience, but I understand these are the few things that are required for the role. I have done an online course on this particular topic. I have read 3 books on this topic. I've also
Hmm.
spoken to about 2 different people who have 10 years of experience in this area. So I understand what is required. Only thing I need is some guidance and some mentorship, and I should be able to do this. So the attitude or the mindset totally changes when they do the pre-work which is required for preparing for any role,
Right.
be it audit, be it taxation, be it FP&A. So what I would, in terms of coming back to your question, now this was just setting some context. Now coming back to your questions, what they could do to differentiate them if they don't have any experience. One is build a portfolio. So uh, building your portfolio in the area of expertise, that in showing expertise in the area in which you are applying for a role, that can be one of the things that you can do. So I typically, when I interview, I would probably shortlist people who have shared their portfolios based on that, rather than just the resume and the cover letter. So I remember
So,
I was hiring. Yeah, go ahead.
sorry. So over here, portfolio means for the benefit of the audience, if you can give some example.
Yes, so I can. So can you just tell me what roles are common that you see in your students, and maybe I can talk about what can be there in those
So
portfolios.
somebody is looking for a role in risk management, or somebody is looking for a role in say corporate finance, likewise.
Right. So I can give you examples. So maybe that can help. So somebody who's looking in corporate finance, risk, audit, FP, all these types of roles. Uh, I have seen people share portfolios or sample presentations and financial models where they are comparing. So if I'm interviewing for say XYZ company, they have sent me presentations where they have compared XYZ company with 3 other competitors, doing
Okay.
all the ratio analysis, all the ratios that we typically learn, right, in corporate finance, which is liquidity ratios, profitability ratios, balance sheet ratio. All those ratios are basics, so which most finance people should know. So I've received Google Drive links where you have detailed comparisons of your company, which you are interviewing for, with the top 3 competitors of all those ratios. So
This
that
is
could
this is
be one.
very interesting. This is
Yes.
very interesting. The top three competitor.
Yeah, again that shows the comes back to the initiative and attitude. That shows the attitude of the person. So that could be one example. If you're working in say some role like an audit role, it could be uh, the audit report that you have drafted, or some engagement letter that is required for an audit role that you have drafted based on whatever you have seen. So uh, think about what are the day-to-day activities that are involved in those roles, and start creating your portfolio based on that. I can think of another example, which is probably in equity research and investment banking roles, is preparing detailed financial model, 3 statement financial model with income statement,
Right.
balance sheet, cash flow statement, along with all the schedules and the backup material for the particular company, which if it is not a listed company that you are interviewing, you can do it for another company which is in the same industry, but you have the data for that. So these are some examples that you can create your portfolio. What this will also do is, even if if the hiring manager doesn't look at the portfolio, ideally they would, most cases they would, even if they don't look at the portfolio, it will give you the confidence in the interview that you have done all of these things practically. So that will come out in your
Right.
conversation, and in one way it will be helping you in the interview, even if somebody does not see the portfolio. It is for you that
Right.
you're doing, not for the hiring manager. It is for your uh, enhancement of your abilities, your skills is what you should be preparing the portfolio.
Right. 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 Wonderful. And now, if you can tell us what does FP&A do, and also how it connects to all the teams in the organization.
Right. So what I usually do, and I've mentioned this in my book, which is all about FP&A, is I think about FP&A team as a bridge between the senior management. So your senior management is your CEO and one level below CEO. So all the heads of businesses, like head of sales, head of marketing, all those are one level below CEO. So it's a bridge between the senior management on one side, and then you have different functions and different business teams on the other side. So the sales team, marketing team are business teams. Then your HR team, your IT team, all those are say function teams. So it's a bridge between the senior management and the business and the function team. So what it does is it helps the senior management in understanding different parts of the business so that they can take decisions about their company or their organization. And they do that through different functions. So one of the most important function is being creating the budget. So what FP&A team does in while they create a budget is they interact with different business teams, which again on the bridge example that I give, they interact with sales team, marketing team, HR team, all those teams. They collect inputs, they send them templates, they collect inputs, they interact with them, understand what their requirements are for the next financial year, what are the resources they will need, what are what in terms of what targets they can achieve realistically in the next financial year. Based on all those inputs, they will collect them, have discussions, consolidate it from different teams. In usually in companies there are 25 different teams, uh, be it functions or be it different product teams, be it different regional teams, country teams. So there are uh, usually it's a matrix kind of organization structure in many big companies. So collecting all those templates, being able to analyzing them, going back, having discussions, consolidating them, and then presenting the final version to the CEO and the senior management. So that is one example of what FP&A does. Another example could be forecasting the next quarter financials. So now the budget is done, you are in the next financial year. Now you need to tell the senior manager, okay, what will the next quarter look like? So there again, you do a similar exercise, although not that extensive. So you again reach out to business teams, you interact with them, you collect inputs, and then you present the forecast to the senior management. There could be weekly reports, there could be daily reports that the senior management might want to see to be able to make quick decisions. And those are some management reports that also FP&A team prepares. So, um, these are some of the important things or most important things that they do, which is budgeting, forecasting, preparing management reports, presenting the financials, the presenting all of these things that I mentioned to the senior management so that they understand what's happening in the organization, and this helps them to take business decisions.
Okay, wonderful. Now, if somebody wants to succeed in this FP&A role, two or three skill set that, as per your understanding, should be good enough.
Yeah, so for somebody who's very new or fresher, has completed their basic finance qualification, it could be BCom, it could be a professional qualification like CA, CMA, FRM, any of those qualifications. For them, they should first of all learn about FP&A. So, as I mentioned earlier in our conversation, any profile that you go, not necessarily FP&A, any profile you target, you should learn about that profile in terms of what happens in practical life, not just
Right.
in academically, but learn it through practical life. So you can do that through books, you can do it through online courses, you can do it through mentors. So any options you can choose, or you can do all of them. So learn about the FP&A role, what FP&A role is requiring. Once you do that, then you start tailoring your resumes for that particular role. In this case, you may want to tailor. Again, we talked about this in the beginning. You should have a different version of the resume for different roles that you're applying. So there should be a specific version of your resume that you're using for FP&A roles application. Once you are ready with your resume, then you start preparing for interviews. You start applying for roles,
Right.
and most likely it will not be the first or the second role that you will be able to crack. It will take you 3 4 5 for you to be able to understand what type of questions come, what is the expectations. Once you, I mean, kind of fail in one or two interviews, you will get a. That's how I learned it. So you get a sense of what the interviewers are looking for, what are the things that are important that you need to highlight, and you will be able to do that better or without less failures when you do the books, courses, and online materials that we talked about. So, uh, more you do the work, the faster you will get into the in any of the roles. In this case, the
And
FP&A role.
and right now, when you are training people around this FP&A, okay, so how do you normally train? How do you normally guide?
Right. So we follow a case study approach. So what we do is we create real life simulations of what people would see in the organization. So we create case studies, examples of situations where they have to interact with different people in the business teams we talked about. So we asked them to create budgets, we asked them to create forecasts, we asked them to create management reports, we asked them to present how as if they are presenting to the CEO, CFO. A lot of people are not very sharp with their communication skills, especially
Right.
people who are in accounting and finance. They are slightly less polished compared to people who are working in marketing and sales because of their job nature of the job. So that is again important. Communication skills is important. Even if you are able to prepare the budget forecast, if you're not able to present it, probably it is not going to be that helpful. So being able to communicate, especially to the non-finance teams, because they don't understand accounting, they don't understand finance, you have to explain to them in very simple words, in very day-to-day language which they can understand, because at the end of the day they will be the decision makers in they will be one of the parties who will be taking the decisions, and you want to make sure that you make them understand all the facts, all the realities of that particular project, of that particular decision that you are
Right.
try asking them to make. And being able to communicate is far the most important skill, apart from all the technical skills that we have discussed. So we talked about all of these. So if I have to summarize, or if I have to just mention top three skills, coming back to your question, I would say Excel and financial modeling is very important. So being able to use Microsoft Excel very efficiently, advanced Excel is
Mhm.
what we call, along with financial modeling tools and techniques. So you should be able to create good financial models. So that is the most important skill. Second would be ability, I mentioned, right, presenting it to the senior management. So you should be able to present it in a graphical way, in way that people understand. So their PowerPoint and tools, BI tools like Power BI, Tableau, all those tools are important. So that would be the second thing. And the third one would be probably you should know a little bit about AI and ChatGPT, and being able to do it all of these things that we talked about very productively and in the minimum amount of time. So Excel, financial modeling, PowerPoint, Power BI, which are data visualization tools, and then finally being able to use generative AI and in most cases ChatGPT, or now we see Copilot coming out. So being able to use Copilot so that you can do all of these things very efficiently and with minimum time and with maximum productivity.
So one final question on this now, that do you see a lot of accounting people doing FP&A? That is one. Second, is it easy for them to enter into FP&A?
Right. So let me answer the first question. Uh, do I see a lot of accounting people going into FP&A? The answer is yes, but not just FP&A. It could be other roles as well. So I would probably, again, this is my own my personal what I feel might happen in say 5 years from now or 10 years from now. So a lot of accounting activities will get automated, and if you need say 10 people in accounting right now in one company, you might only need 2 or 3 people. The remaining seven people
Okay.
will have to find different roles. It could be FP&A, it could be data science, which is another popular stream. So being able to understand data and being able to code, and being able to know how to extract data, how to refine data, how to present data. So uh, I think these two roles would be definitely, and the third one is on AI. So I think a lot of accountants will have to find different ways, be it FP&A, be it data science, or be it AI. So I think these not just so accountants will not just go into FP&A, but there are other options available as well, and FP&A is probably one of the good options.
The second question that I wanted to connecting question was, because of the nature of their work, accountants, do they find it easy to get into FP&A?
Yes. So on this, uh, because I mean, accounting and compliance related roles, that gives you a lot of transferable skills that you can bring into FP&A. So in FP&A, what you do is you project financial statements, you project income statement, you project revenue, project expenses, and you can only do that once you understand the basics of finance and basics of accounting. So definitely, when you are working in accounting or any other compliance related role, you have the basic skill set, you have the basics, what do you call, as the groundwork is there. Only what you need to do is build upon that. So definitely there are a lot of transferable skills. One of the transferable skills is being able to understand accounting, being able to understand finances is the most important skill. And uh, and in most accounting audit roles, in compliance roles, people do some sort of analysis. It's not just transactional. It's not just capturing transactions in most roles. Even if you're in working in accounting or in audit roles, you must be doing some sort of analysis at some level. So being able to identify what are the things that you do in those roles, and then what are those skills that you can bring into the FP&A role, I think that is going to be important. So, answer is going to be, I mean, to answer your question, will it be easy? It's not going to be easy.
Yes.
You'll have to put all the work. You'll have to do all the things that we discussed. You'll have to do the reading. You'll have to do online courses. You'll have to reach out to mentors. Once you understand, then you'll be able to. Ideally, it's not going to be very easy. You'll have to put in a lot of effort. You'll have to put in a lot
Okay.
of work, and it'll take about 6 to 8 months of time if you do all the steps that I just mentioned.
Okay. Okay.
I
So,
mean, you might
I
get
mean,
lucky. You might get lucky, and you might get it in the first. That is probably. I
okay.
mean, I would be happy if you can do that, but that would probably be more of. I mean, more of. I mean, that would be luck, or maybe it might not happen with all of
Okay.
the people.
Right, right. Wonderful, wonderful, Asif. I mean, this conversation is really good because a lot of people who want to go into finance side and they want to understand what different teams are, what mistakes people do. So definitely somebody coming from the background of the industry, somebody who has been coaching people, training people, that is going to be really helpful. Again, thank you very much for taking out time and talking to us and sharing your entire experience on this and in this topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me, inviting me, and I loved the conversation as well. Thank you so much.